How did American evangelical identity and eschatological significance of the nations in the Eastern Mediterranean region become entwined? I think we talked about that a little bit already.
Mm-hmm.
And then the history and development of Zionism and unqualified support for the modern nation of Israel and American religious life. I mean, we covered some of that, but just talk a little bit more about Christian Zionism.
Right. So let me start by saying that as a scholar and a teacher of early Jewish literature, the land of Israel, the people of the land, the history of the land is incredibly interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I have, over many years taken students on trips and encouraged research into understanding that as a way of understanding these religious texts in our world that we import so much meaning into. And so my thinking is, if you're going to take the Bible seriously, then you should know something about the world from which the Bible comes. So I have visited Israel. I have many Jewish friends, but I've also visited other countries around the world, Muslim countries, countries that would largely be described atheistic countries. And in all of those settings, you find real people just living real lives. But the fascination with Israel and the rise of Zionism is both a projection of what Americans think is true about us, and also it is a hope. Honestly, even if most Americans can't articulate it this way, it is a hope for world domination.
Mm-hmm.
And there are just crass economic and capitalist reasons for. So early on, the creation of the nation of Israel in 1948, which, by the way, for dispensational theologians was for them, this was like fulfillment of prophecy. The clock started in 1948. They were going to wait 40 years, and in a generation, Jesus was going to come back. 1988 came and went. Then they redefined a generation to be 70 years. 2008 or 2018 came and went, right? And so you just keep moving the goalposts to help this system stay relevant and afloat. But the interest in Israel as a nation and the rise of Zionism is tied to the political project here in America. And early on, the insiders and the promoters of the nation state of Israel recognized that was something they could capitalize on in the American psyche. And one of the first, so they did create like lobby groups in Washington, D.C. and action groups in New York City. But a significant place that Jewish lobby groups went was to evangelical churches who already had a ready-built eschatology system that would allow them to align with the promotion and the support of Israel and develop what becomes Zionism, right? So to think that every group of people have a right to live in peace somewhere in the world is something I think we should all hold out. So in that basic sense, should Jewish people have a place they could call home? Yes. But then so should Palestinian Christians, Palestinian Muslims, right? Then hold that promise out for all people.
Mm-hmm.
But here in America, there's a lobby group, and honestly, you mentioned the Democratic candidate for president in the last election a few moments ago. I honestly don't think that a change in political party in the U.S. fundamentally changes how embedded Zionism is in our political project.
Mm-hmm.
And almost every elected federal politician has some relationship with or some funding support from a lobby group that expects in return unqualified support for whatever Israel does. And you can see that when leaders of Israel come to speak in political context here in the US, they cash in on that and they expect that sort of unqualified support. And here's the vehicle or the Trojan horse that has been used to kind of secure that broad support for Zionism. It's the promise of democracy.
Mm.
It's the idea, and for decades of my life, right, the rhetoric has been that there's one democratic state in that Middle Eastern basin or that Mediterranean basin, and support for democracy, if we support that project, what we're really doing is it's self-interest as well. We're supporting our own project and our own aspirations for goodwill and democracy around the world, right? So that's sort of the lie we've told ourselves, or the propaganda we've listened to. Anyone who actually goes to Israel and walks the streets, talks to people, knows that it is not a functional democracy the way we think of it. Yes, they have a seat of government where people vote, where there is representation, and they actually have a much messier system of elections. Sometimes they have 2 or 3 elections in a 4-year period because there's a lot of disagreement and there are more than 2 political parties. But what they're actually operating with is a system of apartheid. They're operating with a system of a social tier where people, depending on ethnicity and then secondarily on wealth and status, they fit into society in a at least a 5 or 6 tier system, right? So an ethnic Jew with citizenship is at the top of that pyramid, right? At the bottom is the Palestinian settler with no citizenship, no voting rights, living in a refugee camp because 85 years ago, their great-grandparents' property was taken away from them, and they were put in a refugee camp 85 years ago with the promise of new places to live, even though that's not what they wanted, but with the promise of new places to live within about 2 or 3 years period of time. And their great-grandchildren are still living in those same refugee camps. I mean, I've gone a bit afield on that, but why the interest and the fascination is that there's a tremendous amount of finance and capital that gets poured into this narrative. And I think across our political experience, whether Republican or Democrat, you would largely find people who, at the end of the day, because that's where dollars of support are coming from, would give unqualified support. And the church in America, unfortunately, has greased the skids for that.